Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Women Are Worthy Network. Y'all, when I tell you I'm getting my Christmas gift, I'm getting my belated birthday gift with this wonderful guest that we have on our show. She's in our tribe. So let me get to this because I'm so excited and elated. Well, we have a wonderful guest, and tonight we're going to be talking to author, podcaster, mother. My God, this woman, you know what? I got to take a drink because she has so many titles that I got to give her, her kudos on this. So we're going to talk to Clarissa Moss. Now, Clarissa, I brought her on the show because I wanted to talk about, let's get real. It's 2022, and I don't know about y'all. I am drained, okay? And it's just January 11th, and I'm drained, okay? From the news, watching television, my phone that's beeping with something else, or the computer, or someone picking up the phone and calling you and saying, "Hey, such and such is in the hospital." You're praying for them. You pick up the phone again, such and such is passed. You're praying for them. You don't even get a chance. I'm emotionally exhausted. I'm emotionally, physically exhausted. My tank is on empty. So lo and behold, I got acquainted with Clarissa Moll. So Clarissa knows exactly what I'm speaking about because you never know what's going to happen next. So Clarissa's beloved husband, Rob, he died on a hiking accident in July of 2019. And, who would expect something like that, And to see how this woman has bounced back, listen to me, come a little closer. She has 4 children. 1, 2, 3, 4 kids. And she's beaming and she's glowing. So, we want to talk about, she's she's widowed with 4 children, and she's learning to discover grace into grief, and grief into grace. So basically, what we're talking about tonight, how do you overcome this? How do you get through this? And when I say overcome, I don't mean any disrespect, like, okay, you overcome it next. But what do you do? Because there's days, y'all, I'm just like exhausted from the news I heard the night before, just hearing things. How do you find the sunshine? How do you find hope? Yes, she has her children, but she's still a woman. She's, a widowed woman. How do you do this? So without further ado, the Women Are Worthy Tribe, we welcome Miss Clarissa Moll. Hello, Clarissa.
Hi, thanks for having me today.
No, honey. Thank you, because you saving my sanity and my peace of mind. My husband probably want to kiss the screen because I have you on the show, okay? Because I'm driving him crazy. Clarissa, can you please share your journey with us? Because I think before you share your journey, I want to say this to you. You are a freaking rock star. You kick butt. And I say that humbly because I love women such as yourself, where you want to share. You're just not going to keep it to yourself. You want to share your experience and help other, not just women, people, human beings. So again, we thank you for being a phenomenal guest on our show.
Thank you. Well, my husband Rob and I were married for 17 years, and it wasn't perfect, but it was really wonderful, as good marriages are. They're not storybook or Hallmark Channel romances; they're real life. But we had a really great life together, and we had 4 children. And on our family vacation in 2019, at the sort of the pinnacle moment of our vacation, Rob took a long ridgeline hike with a good friend of his, a hiking partner in Mountain Rainier National Park. And he didn't come home that day. He never called from the trailhead. Instead, a chaplain arrived at my campsite that night to tell me that he had fallen to his death. And that dad and husband wasn't coming home anymore. And so certainly not what you expect for your vacation. It wasn't in the plans, as it were. When you go on vacation, you plot out where you're going to go, what your rental car will be, your hotel accommodations, but you never plan for death. And isn't that just the way that for so many of us in this season, death is arriving, whether it's in your immediate family or it's just a colleague or a distant friend? It does seem like death comes without warning. And so for the last 2.5 years, that's been my journey, trying to figure out what to do next. What does life look like when death interrupts all the plans you had for your life? Um, can God be good when such hard things happen? When you try to have lived a good life and done all the right things or prayed the right prayers, what 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 happens next in your relationship with God and your spiritual journey? And like you say, what does it mean to overcome when you know that this grief isn't something that you move on from or that you get over? You'll always miss your person. My heart will always long for Rob to be with me, with our family. But what does that look like to live a life of overcoming in the spirit when you have this companion of grief that's going to walk with you until the world is made new again?
And here's the thing too. What people need to understand and what we need to understand, it's different when someone has a lingering health illness and it's a possibility or it's just a matter of time. Then you go out with a healthy person, with your significant other, your beloved husband, and then someone rings your doorbell and you hear this shocking news, and then you have to break it to your babies. What was that like?
Well, it's never easy news to give to anyone, and I think in so many ways, children have so much more resilience than we
Mhm.
do as adults, and what a gift that is to know that that even bad things that happen to our children or for our children are things that they can grow through and grow from. And that's certainly been the experience of my children, that this most difficult news has been something that's been both a weight for them and has been a catalyst for growth. It's certainly nothing that you would ever wish to be the catalyst for your own growth. And yet, this is the trauma of losing a father, losing a husband, is something that that I believe we're equipped to grow through the resilience that God has knit into our very DNA and our genes, and also the resurrection that He promises us in His Son Jesus.
What brought you through this other than God? Did you seek therapy, what did you do?
Oh, I did. I don't think I could have made it without my therapist. I am all for partnering up with someone who has walked a hard journey before you, or someone with the wisdom to guide you through your difficult journey. I connected with widow groups online because, of course, COVID began just 8 months after my husband died. So meeting in person wasn't a possibility. So I hooked up with some grief support groups online, and I began meeting with a therapist. I made a list of family and friends who I thought I could call upon for those really practical support sorts of things. Because as you find, if you've lost a loved one, all of a sudden, those people who used to contact you regularly, they often stop calling. People don't know what to say. They don't know what to do. They're afraid of saying the wrong thing or doing the wrong thing. And so they don't do anything at all. But I knew I needed help. There was no denying it. From the very beginning, I knew there was no way that I could do this alone. And so, yeah, I began reaching out to people as I was able. It's not an easy thing to reach out, even in your moment of greatest need. And I'm grateful for all of the friends and family who kept on showing up, who kept asking, can I help you in this way? Or can I help you in that way? Even when I said no, because it felt like too much, I'm grateful that they kept asking those questions, kept showing up, because in the end, their presence was the greatest gift. And knowing that I wasn't forgotten, especially during those darkest days, was a real light of hope for me when life seemed really bleak.
What I want people to understand and to really take away from this, there's going to be a lot of gems that she's going to be dropping. But one of the things that I really want you to take away from this is, if you have a friend who has experienced, or family member, or someone you know has experienced, and please interject anytime, has experienced death, please, for the love of God, do not leave them by themselves. So what I mean by that is, I don't know what to say. Clarissa just said it's the presence. They may tell you no. That doesn't mean you should disappear. And I get it. You may feel uncomfortable, but again, it's not about you, it's about them. Because think about this. So many people probably was bombarding Clarissa. Well, do you need this? Do you need this? It's overwhelming. You're already going through the trauma and drama with your husband, and then you have to deal with the kids, and then people are coming at you, and then people just leave. And I've noticed that when, I've had that experience where, oh my God, where is everyone? The first day, the funeral, and then the wake, the funeral, and then they bring the food, and then, okay, where's everyone? The food's all gone. Where is everyone? So it's the presence. Do not get distracted. It's not about you. Don't feel offended if they keep saying no, 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 no. Eventually they're going to say yes. But think of, and also when you keep calling them, at least they hear your voice. They hear your voice. So that's what they need. So please, for the love of God, please keep trying. And I don't mean to be, to go overboard with it like every day, but just give them some time and then go back, because Clarissa, I can relate to you. It's not with your husband. It's lonely. After the funeral and maybe a week goes by, then that's it. Everyone goes on their merry way. So please do that. So with that said, when you mention that, my question to you is, how can you please tell people who still feel that way, like I may be bothering her? What advice would you give them? Or what would you, like, I'm your friend and I disappeared for a while. What advice would you give me so I could know going forward in the future with someone else?
Well, I would say, think about your relationship with that person before their loss. What was it like? Were you casual acquaintances? Well, what kinds of ways did you interact with them then that would seem normal before they lost their person? And do those things now, because the only thing that's changed is that they've lost someone that they loved. That relationship with you doesn't need to shift. And so if you were a person who texted a friend every once in a while, keep doing that. If you were somebody who would invite a friend out for a coffee, keep doing that. Even though your friend may say no because her eyes are puffy and she doesn't want to show up at Starbucks and she's got to wear sunglasses indoors because she's embarrassed about how she looks, just let her know it's okay. It's okay to say no. I just want you to know that I love you. And when you're ready, I want to take you. One thing that I find really helpful is to think of all the firsts that your friend will do without their person, whether it's a spouse, whether they've lost a child or a neighbor or a friend. If they've lost a child or if their death in their close vicinity has been related to medical care, it might be really hard for them to go to the doctor or the dentist alone for the first time after they've lost their person. So volunteer. Hey, could I be the person who drives you to the doctor? I'll wait in the parking lot in the car for you when you get out. I just want you to know you're not alone. And those words, I just want you to know you're not alone, can go so far. I think they cover a multitude of sins, because for all of us, we're not really fluent in the language of care in this way. And we all just kind of fumble our way toward loving each other. But it's those simple acts, similar to those gifts your kids give you when they're little. They're crudely made and they color outside of the lines, but they convey so much love because they're made with intention. And those small acts of intention that you share with your friend in need will convey your love for them, even if they're imperfect.
Now, someone just received news that their significant other has passed and they're looking for a group. How did you find your group out there that, because you need, other than the therapy, it's great to talk to other people or just sit in a group and not say anything, but listen. How did you find your tribe?
Well, because I was a young widow, I was concerned that I wouldn't find other women who were kind of in my situation. I called a local hospice organization and they said, I just want to let you know that most of the folks who sign up for the young widows or the young widows and widowers group are like in their 50s or 60s. And that was, 10, 15, 20 years older than I was when I lost my husband. And I felt like I wouldn't fit in. So I went online and started searching for young widows groups and found them online. As soon after, my church began a grief share ministry, which is a fantastic ministry not only for people in the church, but for the whole community. It's a 13-week program where you get to show up and be loved and work through some material to help you engage with your grief and begin to kind of integrate that loss into the life you're living now without your person. So Grief Share is an excellent resource. You can look that up on the internet and find churches and other organizations that host those groups. And of course, organizations like hospice have, and even hospitals have grief support groups as well. If you're looking for something that's a little bit more informal or one-on-one, there are a lot of churches that also offer Stephen Ministries programs, which are they're trained lay leaders who come alongside people who are really going through tough times, whether you're grieving the loss of a relationship through divorce or through a job loss, or you're grieving the actual loss of a loved one through death. Those folks are trained to walk beside you. It's not therapy, but it's companionship. And for most grieving people, they may not need a therapist, but they definitely need a companion. And whether you go the more formal route of grief therapy and counseling, or you look for companionship support, I think there are a lot of resources out there that can be really helpful.
My question is, you go back home, and this is a bed you shared with your husband. Did you go back into the bedroom? Did you sleep with the children? Because, and I'm asking that question because I've received a couple of questions to ask you. So some of
Mhm.
them maybe from some of the viewers. What did you like? How did you approach that?
I did. I slept with my kids for a while. And I was okay with that. We had left on vacation and the bed was neatly made and I was coming home to an empty bed and I just didn't want to sleep there. It didn't feel like my room anymore. But my clothes were in there and so I'd sleep with the kids and walk into my bedroom in the morning to get dressed. And after a while I decided, you know what, I'm just going to sit on the bed.
Mhm.
And I'll check my email on my phone or scroll through Instagram. And then I thought, well, maybe I'll slip my legs under the covers. It was one tiny step at a time. And when I was ready to think about sleeping in my bed overnight, I got all the extra pillows in our house and I stuck them all on Rob's side of the bed because I was like, I don't want that horrible feeling of rolling over to the cold side of the bed. I
Mhm.
want a kind of a buffer zone. So for a long time, I slept with a lot of pillows on one side of the bed. Now I sleep alone in my bed and I'm okay almost 3 years later. But it's certainly something that's taken a long time to get used to after almost 20 years of sharing a bed with someone.
Wow. See, and I like that idea about putting the buffers with that's a great idea. Have you decided do you feel Rob is still with you? Like, do you talk to him or have conversations? Do you feel his spirit is with you?
Uh, I don't. And I don't know what that would feel like though, I guess. I at the beginning after he died, I wrote him an email every day to tell him what we were doing um and to try to keep him updated as though he could read them. And really it was just because I was so accustomed to talking to him every day that to just cut off that conversation in a moment seemed so unnatural. And over time, I stopped emailing him, and it that felt more awkward than not because it was so obvious that he was gone. But there are so many moments that even as time has passed, though I don't, as you say, feel his presence with me, I tap into his wisdom all the time.
Mm.
I will think, okay, what would Rob do right now? Or I get frustrated and I say, I sure wish you were here so I could ask you a
Yeah.
question.
Yeah.
So I guess that in a way I talk to him. I pray every night that God would give him joy in his presence, because
Mm.
I definitely believe that Rob is now part of that great cloud of witnesses in Hebrews 11, that he's cheering me on as I continue this walk of faith. And you don't stop loving someone after they die.
Right.
And so, he is in perfect joy now. So I just pray that he continues that, because my heart keeps wanting to love him, and prayer is the way that I can do that.
Well, I'm going to tell y'all something, okay? So, y'all know I love to read, right? So, got this book, and I said, let me read it. And it's Rob Moll, forwarded by Clarissa Moll, The Art of Dying, Living Fully into the Life to Come. When I tell y'all need to go out and get this, okay? Y'all need to have this. This is such a good book. So, my question to you is why? Why?
Mm.
Why?
Well, Rob was a journalist,
Mhm.
and he was researching during the Terry Schiavo case of euthanasia back in the late 90s, early 2000s. So he was doing a lot of writing about what it meant to die well, about ethical dying, about euthanasia. And he began to wonder, why aren't Christians talking about this any more than simply an ethical dilemma?
Mhm.
Why aren't we talking about death and dying like at church, or in our small groups, or in ministries? And he began this path of research. He joined a hospice organization and began to visit folks on the weekends who were dying and attend to them as a volunteer. And he took a job as the night desk guy at a local funeral home, so receiving
Mm.
calls from family members who were bereaved. And it really changed his entire perspective about what it could mean to die well. So that book, The Art of Dying, is a result of those years of study and really immersion into the Christian experience of dying. Now, folks have asked me, isn't it a little ironic that he wrote a book about dying, and then, all these late years later, he died young? But I think Rob was just doing what we all should do. He
Mm.
was considering his mortality when he was healthy, and could think about it without the pressure
Right.
of an impending medical diagnosis, or hard decisions to make. He was thinking about his death as a normal part of his life. And what it did for him was to prompt him to want to live well. And I think that's something that we can all do. And I think that's the intention of his book, too. It's certainly, how to die well, but it's also, when we learn to die well, we learn to live well, and
Well.
vice versa.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, whether you're walking with someone who is dying, or attending to them, or you are dying yourself, wrestling with a terminal diagnosis, or whether you just want to know, what does it mean to live a really fulfilling life? I think this book is a helpful guide,
Mhm.
because it lets you look at your end, which can seem dark and foreboding until you see how much it can change the way you live your everyday.
And that's true because you hear people who are on that, making the transition, and they talk about the shoulda, woulda, couldas. And that's why live every day, especially with what we have going on in the world today. Nothing, before we would say tomorrow's not promised. Well, now tomorrow's definitely not promised. So live here and live every day like it's your last. Go for it. Whatever it is you want to do, go for it. What's the worst that can happen? If you fail, is it really a failure? You actually tried it, you attempted. And if you failed, or you were not successful, because I don't like the word failure, you were not successful, but you still want to pursue that. If you go through the window, it doesn't work, try to go through the window, go through the roof. Can't go through the roof, go through the door. Figure a way out. Find your tribe to get you to where you need to be. And I'm hoping that's what people are using this time because COVID. Prior to COVID, I was running, doing 50 million things at once. I'm everywhere and wasn't practicing as much self care as I should. So then, when we had the lockdown and the shutdown, what happened was most people who were together decided to divorce because they really didn't like each other. Parents didn't like homeschooling their children, and teachers would tell you about your child, and you're like, no, that's not my child. Your child's at home, and you're like, oh, that is my child. you know you wake up and you're like, I don't really like my child, or I don't like my husband. So right now is the time to, so when that happened, I realized, okay, I like my husband. What else do I want to do? I'm doing so many things. What's my passion? That's the word. What's my passion? What's my get up out of the bed to do? And it's this. This is what I love to do. So I realized, okay, let me just get with people who are better at this than myself. And I'm saying that to say, Clarissa, we all have to start walking our truth, our journey, our passion, because I don't want to be one of those people shoulda, woulda, couldas. I've seen so many people the shoulda, woulda, couldas, or they're at a certain age in life and they're like, life just passed me by. I really wanted to do this, but I got stuck behind the desk working. So, and even with family or friends, there isn't anything that bad. It's okay to start making amends. I'm not saying they have to be in your life, but when you really think about it, you can't sweat the small stuff because life, you can't buy life. So I just love the things that you're saying. And again, I'm not being paid to do this, but you guys got to get this book. You got to get this book. I'm going to probably put this as a screensaver on my phone and everything, because it's a really good book. And I love because when someone asks me to describe myself, I says my effervescent smile. I just love the word effervescence, and I see that with you because you have this glow. So, what makes you, other than your children, what makes you get up every morning and smile? Where some women who are in your position and were in your position can't get them to smile; they're still stuck.
Yeah. Well, early on in my grief journey, after I had lost Rob, I went on the internet looking for grief resources and I ran across an article about post traumatic growth. And I thought, ooh, this sounds like what I want. I don't want to be stuck in this horrible feeling that I have right now. I want to grow through this. I know that I can't move on and somehow leave my grief in the past, that it's going to walk with me. It's going to be with me for the rest of my life. But how do I live with this weight? How do I make it not break me, but remake me? And so that was the purpose that I had. Now, it didn't start out beautiful because that first year of loss is just gut wrenching. It is feeling nauseous. It is wanting to sleep, but not being able to sleep. It's needing to sleep so much that you have no energy to do your work the next day. It's trying to pull through for your kids, but losing your temper because you're just so worn down. And it feels like just this long and horrible drowning in sorrow. And so there was a time where I thought, this is just a joke. There's no way that people move on from grief. If they do, they must be kind of stuffing it down somewhere and not thinking about it anymore. But as time passed and as I turned with compassion to my grief and listened to the sorrow that I felt inside, and also began to notice some of the wisdom that grief was giving me, some of those wise words, like you said, about purpose and passion and even reconciliation in relationships. The grief was saying, hey, life is short. Don't let this moment of learning pass you by. I sort of latched onto those nuggets of wisdom that grief was sharing in between all those gut wrenching, sad, and ugly cry experiences,
Mhm.
and I began to pursue that growth that I had read about so long ago that I had felt like was unreachable. And, post-traumatic growth is after the trauma. It's after the hard thing. It doesn't happen in the midst of whatever that
Right.
terrible, awful thing is happening. It's a choice you make afterwards. How am I going to step forward with hope after what has happened to me? And it doesn't need to be the death of a loved one. It can be any traumatic experience. But you step forward by making teeny tiny steps of faith in the goodness of others, of creating possibilities for yourself where maybe you didn't think there was any possibility before, about reaching to challenge yourself a little bit when you feel like you've got the energy for it. And also, like you say, having the knowledge to step back and offer yourself good, nourishing self care when you need it. All those kinds of things, they can be really simple as making sure your nails are done because that feels good to you,
Mhm.
or getting your hair done, or something deep like connecting with a friend who really understands what you're going through. All those ways of nourishing our souls and spirits are first tiny steps in the journey that we take toward growth after losing our person, so that as we're caring for those little parts of ourselves, we say, hey, maybe I am ready to interview for this new job
Mhm.
or try a new relationship. Maybe I'm ready to start dating again. Or, I've lost a child. Maybe I'm ready to join a support group, not as a participant, but as a facilitator, because
Mhm.
I'm ready to comfort with the comfort that I've received. You start to see that growth happen slowly, slowly over time, but it's always a choice. It's never something that just happens after trauma. It's something that each of us have to choose.
And I like servitude because whenever I'm going through something that's rough or something that I deem trauma, I like to volunteer. So I have a cancer support group that I do things with, and massaging or just doing something with kids. And for me, the two most traumatic things happened in my life. My grandfather was of the world to me. But we've had that relationship where I love you, he loves me, he taught me so many things that when he died, it didn't, I wasn't stuck. It was almost, I was telling myself, he knows how much I love him. I didn't grieve at the funeral because I was the closest to him than anyone in the family. I didn't grieve the normal way I thought I should have grieved. I didn't understand that. And then when my nephew died, it was the same thing. But then I realized the spirit told me, Jackie, there isn't anything wrong with you. The reason you're not grieving like everyone else is because every day you told him you loved him. Every Saturday you baked him whatever cake he wanted, even though he was getting on your nerves. You took care of him. You loved him. So, and I was the person who was supposed to speak, on his about him, at the funeral. And everyone was boo-hooing, and for me, I'm like, he's in a better place, but he knows I loved him. And that's what got me through it, Clarissa. And all this time I was thinking, maybe there's something wrong with me. Why is everyone, trying to knock his body out of the coffin? What's going on? What's wrong with me? Because I thought it was something I was going through, and I wasn't making it about me. But I'm seeing, when you see everyone crying and you're not crying, you're like, am I stuck? What's going on? And then the spirit told me, no, Jackie, you had a great relationship with him. It doesn't mean that you're not sensitive or desensitized. He went to heaven knowing that you loved him. You guys spoke about it a lot, and that helped me. And that also helped me to people who I've had disagreements with in the family. I can say, I forgive you. We have a conversation. I forgive you. I don't need to let you back into my life now, but I can say, I forgive you, because there's some things that need to be said, in order to close the circle. So that's what has helped me. And I am intentionally trying to live my life with intention,
Mm.
just and making sure, the languages of love. Make sure that, because you can build people up and you can tear them down. I don't want to use this to tear people down, because you can tear people down and not know a person down, that when they go home, you don't know what they're doing or thinking. There's this thing where this guy, I guess it's out there, where this guy was driving his car. He was going to go home and commit suicide, and when he stopped at a red light, a lady looked over to him and said, "Hi, how are you?" For whatever reason. And that's the reason why he didn't go home, because he's never heard someone say anything good to him. So I think a kind word. But I really want to focus on people who've experienced death, that we, the people, we are the villagers, do not let our other village person leave them alone by themselves. Knock on the door, slip a note. Even if you don't want to talk to them, send them a note, send them an email, how much you love them and I'm here for you and yada, yada. Do that. Take the time to do that, because y'all, we see what's going on right now. All we have is each other.
That's right. Yeah. Well, and you bring up such a good point, Jackie, that grief, while it's a universal experience, that we all experience grief, each person's grief experience is unique.
Mm-hmm.
Each person, even when it's a family member, you mourn that relationship that you had with that person. So if you had a really healthy relationship where you felt like there was a sense of completion, then your grief will look different from a relationship where there was strife, or where there was some tension there, or there were some words that were never said that should have been said, like thank you, or I forgive you, or I'm sorry. So as we tend to each other with gentleness, it's important to keep that in mind. Like you say, that each person's grief experience is unique. So whether you cry or you don't cry, that can be okay. Whether you go back to work right after your person dies, or you just feel like you can't ever go back to work again, it's all within the range of normal, because while we experience grief, everybody does, because death comes to each of us. We each experience it in our hearts in a unique way. And so you don't need to worry that your timeline doesn't look like somebody else's,
Right.
or that your outward expressions don't look like somebody else's, that you're not moving on as quickly or as slowly as someone else. You can be assured that the way you're doing it is just right for you.
And I had a friend that called me that told me that this lady, her son, when he was born, I think they gave him like maybe a year to live. He then, surprised them and lived like 28 years later. He passed. When he passed, he's one of like maybe 11 kids. When he passed, his mom was so shocked that majority of her children they had altar call, came down in front of the altar and gave their life to Christ. So for that was comforting to her, because who knows if she's been telling them this is what they need to do, so for her, that gave her some comfort that in his death, his siblings came to the Lord. When I heard that, that warmed my heart. Not saying that, oh my God, thank God. It was just, out of something that we think was bad, something good happened out of it too, because there can be good in death as well. And I don't think because I think in this society death is morbid. And when I look at it, Clarissa, and I'd like you to speak on this for me, we want this person to be here, especially if they're sick. We want them to stay here. No, don't go. Hold on, don't go. But are we really being selfish because they're in pain? And it took me a while to start thinking about this, because I'm telling you, COVID has me speaking deep, honey. I am so deep now. So I think about that. If they're in pain and they just want to go, I can say that now, we have to let them go, because there is a better place for them. Physically, we won't see them, but maybe spiritually. And that's what I was asking you with Rob, when you're talking to Rob or you're sending him a letter, are we being selfish do you think, by wanting that person to still be here when they're in pain, they're terminally ill and they're in pain?
Well, I think love can be selfish, but in our hearts, we long to be with people that we love, in whatever state they are. And I think those are really difficult moments for families, when there's some question about prolonging life, or offering palliative treatment, about choosing hospice, those sorts of things, or seeking other more invasive health measures to keep someone living longer. And that's where those conversations around completing a relationship can be really helpful. When you've thought about that relationship with that person, have you said, I'm sorry yet? What are the reasons that you just want a little bit longer? Is it because there's some unresolved thing that you need to talk about with this person? Well, go ahead and do that now. Not so that you can release them more easily, perhaps to death, but because that resolution holds your peace back. Do you need to say, I'm sorry? Do you need to offer forgiveness? That can be a really hard one to do, especially if there's no way for that person to make things right. You can still offer forgiveness as a way of offering yourself the peace that you need to be able to let that person go. Do you need to tell that person that you love them? So many times we think about loving someone, but we don't actually say it out of our mouths. And to make sure that you have said all of the loving words that you want to say, make sure you say those to your person. And, those kinds of conversations, the person doesn't even need to be, they could be in a coma. They could be under sedation. That's okay. All of those conversations can still happen, and they can still bring peace to your own spirit in a way that allows you to let go and let the person's body do what is happening naturally to it, which is to shut down. Rob used to talk to our children about death as it's like a factory closing down for the night. First, the lights are turned off and the heat's turned off. Then they close and lock the doors and everything is quiet. And just that really simple image is, what's happening in bodies as they end. And when we're having those conversations with our person in whatever capacity we can, I think it offers us some peace to be able to kind of let go of our clenched fists and begin to offer our person back to God.
So where do you see what's next for Clarissa Moll? What's next for you?
Well, I'm really excited because my next book is called Beyond the Darkness, A Gentle Guide for Living with Grief and Thriving After Loss, is available for pre-order on Amazon right now. It's going to be released in July 2022, just at the 3-year anniversary of Rob's death. And it's a practical, gospel-infused guide if you have lost your person, to be able to talk about these things that we often don't talk about in loss. Like, what do you do when people keep bringing you casseroles and you've lost your appetite? What do you do when you're afraid to go to the doctor, or you're not sure how to manage all of the finances now that your person has died? How do you move forward in your life and find hope again? It's a really practical resource for folks who are in that experience of grief. And I hope it'll be helpful for people as they, as a companion to them, as they are walking their own grief journey.
It will. And you have to come back on the show because I want you to read it, not the whole book, but we're going to go through some chapters that I'm going to read. And I want you to do some reading on that so we can, I think that book along with this, but that book, oh my God, we're going to predict that's going to be a bestseller because that book, I mean, think about this, the casseroles and all that. I want that book broken down for people because there's some things that I love the part about the casserole. Oh my God, I can't wait. When's July? How many months? I can't wait for that because we have to get you back on to do that. And I got to tell your people, we got to get you back on for that because that book, when you just said it, it just pulled me. It just pulled at my soul when you said that, because it's more, it's spiritually and gospel but the other things that people talk about, but it's not in a book. So it's almost like a pocket guide, so to speak, to me. That's what it sounds like, a pocket guide help you through it. So I love that. Love it, love it, love it. You have to come back on.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll talk about all the awkward things, all the, what is it like when you don't have your person's body anymore and you've been married? What does it look like when you're trying to rebuild your life? And how does Jesus show up over and over again to remind you that you're not alone?
And then also you have people when they're working through it and the dating again, the awkwardness, you haven't been dating for such a long time, the awkwardness, and then bringing that person into the household. If you get, you're dating and introducing to the kids, girl, you got to come back, Clarissa, you got to come back. First of all, we welcome you to the tribe. Thank you for being part of our, our platform. But you are now one of our tribe, honey. So for those of you out there, you must subscribe. In order to be in our tribe, you must subscribe. So make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. And we have upcoming guests. We have some phenomenal shows. Clarissa, you've been a joy, honey. You've been
Thank
a
you.
joy. I just love your enthusiasm, and you're willing to help other people. Not just, no, it's all about me. And I just love what you're doing. But please, I'm holding you to that promise that you're coming back. Don't tell your team that I basically, hoodwinked you to come back on this show. But I'll go through the proper channels, but we definitely need you to come back. And don't forget to send the plate thing so I can
Yes,
get that.
will
So
do.
again, everyone, please make sure you pick up her book. I'm telling you, it's phenomenal. The Art of Dying, Clarissa Moll. You have to get that book. But baby, where can we get the pre-order? Where's the pre-order?
You can look it up right on Amazon, Beyond the Darkness, and it's Clarissa Moll like doll, Moll.
That's right. So guys and girls, please go out there and get that, okay? Because I'm telling you, we're going to do like a book club kind of it. Ooh, maybe that's what we should do, a book club. Yes. And just read. So anyway, we want to thank everyone for tuning in to the Women Are Worthy Network. Thank you. We want you to make sure that you're actually sanitizing, you're social distancing, because this thing is going crazy. And make sure you live in your purpose. Live intentionally. It's you. If you're not being selfish, go out there and do you. And if you need any additional help, how can they reach out to you, Clarissa?
Sure, you can reach me at clarissamall.com. That's my website. And I like to hang out on Instagram. That's my social media. So you can find me at Moll Clarissa. And I love to interact with readers and followers. You send me a message and I will write you back.
Okay, so we want to thank everyone for tuning in. Today is a terrific Tuesday. We want you to have a wonderful Wednesday, a tremendous Thursday, fabulous Friday, soothing Saturday. So whether you want to have a soothing Saturday or soothing Sunday, make sure you enjoy yourself. And Sunday is Self-Care Sunday, okay? Don't forget that self-care. Bye, everyone.